AJ Cassavell, MLB.com. He's out in San Diego. The Padres are in the mix for bets, too. AJ, good to have you with us here, and let's discuss this with San Diego. Were they seriously in this late, or did they drop out because they couldn't get the Red Sox to take Will Myers back? What can you tell me?
I think they were in it, and it's easy to see why the Padres would be so interested in Mookie Betts. I mean, he kind of catapults them from that middle-of-the-pack 500 team maybe into playoff contention. The long-term plan doesn't change now that they don't have Mookie Betts. I mean, they still have a good farm system and a good group of young players. But in the short term, they wanted him, and I think ultimately the difference was the Dodgers were willing to take on David Price's contract. The Padres probably pieced together a better group of young players and prospects. But if the Red Sox wanted to get below that threshold, the Dodgers ended up being the better route for them.
Right, and obviously they took a contract away from the Red Sox and did not want to give the Red Sox a contract, which is what San Diego did. Were they desperate to get Myers out of there in this trade? Could they have pulled this off without unloading Will Myers to Boston? How about that?
I don't think they could have pulled it off financially. I think what would have happened and the way it would have gone down was the Padres would have given some number of dollars to Boston in order to take on Will Myers' contract. So the Red Sox, in theory, would have been able to get closer to the CBT threshold, but
right.
They wouldn't have been all the way under it. And so they still would have been able to have Price and potentially deal him and get under that number. And if Boston had pulled this trade, maybe they have a better group of prospects and young guys going forward. I know catching prospect Luis Campusano, who's probably one of the names involved. He's a guy who I think a lot of people in the Padres organization view very highly as potentially a catcher of the future. And so in some ways, I mean, the Padres are definitely worse off for 2020. They would have loved to have had maybe the second best hitter in baseball to plug into right field. But in some ways, this is still move forward in San Diego because they have all the same pieces they would have going forward in 2021 and beyond.
Now, I know the last 2 years they've hit home runs with these free agents. They've, answered the bell with Hosmer and Machado. Now, they haven't been great yet, but they spent some money. Did they risk teasing their fan base about Betts only not to pull them off and the hated neighbors in the north got them? Is there any bad ramification to that? Let me hear.
Yeah, I think there's some palpable sense of, well, this trade got out there and the Padres were actually made some progress on these trade talks. And now not only did they not get them, but the rivals in the division, the team they've been chasing for 8 years to win that division, they're the team that ended up with him. At the same time, there's going to be some sense of disappointment reporting to spring training, knowing that the team would have been better with Betts, and now they don't have Betts. But the franchise is still heading in the direction they would like to be heading. And so they could have given up one of those big name, Mackenzie Gore, C.J. Abrams, Luis Patino, one of those guys who are going to be integral in turning this thing around in the next 3, 4, 5 years. But they decided they didn't want to do that for 1 year of Mookie Betts. And you can kind of commend them for that and for also sticking to the plan, and that 2020 probably wasn't going to be the year in San Diego. Even if you add Betts, maybe it's a sneak into the playoff as a wild card type thing. But I think in the big picture, they didn't want to. They wanted to hold on to those guys and the guys they've signed in the last couple of years. Manny Machado specifically, he's going to be here for the long haul. So maybe putting all your chips on the table for 2020, it wasn't the best option. That being said, they clearly would have liked to have pulled off something that could have gotten them closer to a playoff spot in 2020.
Excellent point, because I don't think Betts ever would have re-signed with San Diego. The Padres wouldn't have given him the $400 million. Dodgers could. So for 1 year, it may have not been worth it. That's an excellent point. Where are we right now with the team? We know they got some everyday players, and we've all heard about these prospects in the kingdom come. They have enough pitching. Paddock, of course, top of the rotation. What's could they be incrementally better or a lot better coming up here in this particular season, which last year was a huge disappointment, horrendous second half, manager fired, everybody put on the spot with the owner? What's the scenario for this year? Let me hear.
Yeah, so they finished 70 and 92 last year, and I think they internally think they're a better team than that, just by the fact that some of their young players have a year more of experience. They might bring up some of the prospects. That being said, the way the second half finished, I mean, it led to some cause for concern. And so they went out and got Tommy Pham. They kind of solidified some things in the outfield. The top half of their lineup, I would say, is very good with Machado, Pham, Fernando Tatis Jr., one of the best young players in baseball, Eric Hosmer. The bottom half has question marks, and those question marks don't mean they're going to be bad players. It just means there are questions involving some outfielders like Trent Grisham, Josh Naylor. Will Myers is a guy who's had success in the past. Taylor Trammell is coming up through the minor leagues. And so I think pitching wise, they're in a decent spot because they have these prospects, Mackenzie Gore, Luis Patino coming through to join up with Chris Paddock, Dinelson Lamet, Garrett Richards. But the bottom half of the starting lineup is where the Padres wanted to improve things this winter, and they did it to some degree. They would have done it to a much bigger degree had they gotten Mookie Betts, maybe the second best player in the sport.